I'm Jax, and today we're going to take a look at the next question in our New Year, New Ways series. When others offer you unsolicited advice, do you accept it without question or analyze their motive for giving it? There was a time in my life when I was just like a sponge. A sponge is a porous material that sucks up whatever liquid material is right beside it. And it just holds all this material and holds all this material. It just becomes a carrying vessel of some other stuff. And that was my brain. I had such an insecurity towards believing my own thoughts and standing up for myself and just being who I was supposed to be. Instead, when someone came up, it would be like, oh, they're better at this than me, I'm going to take their thought. Or they're more educated than me, I'm going to take their thought. Or they're just an all-around cool person and I'm not, so I'm definitely going to take their thought. And there is a good, how do I put it? There is a good part in regards to accepting other people's thoughts if you're trying to change your current paradigm or you want to become something and that person is an excellent teacher and they walk what they talk. But that's not the case for myself. Myself is I just would go with the wind or whatever was happening at that time because I just did not have the mindset to make my own decisions. I was so afraid that I wasn't going to be liked, and I was so afraid that people wouldn't accept me if I voiced my own opinion. There was a time in my life where I met this woman. She happened to be a relative of mine, and she was one of the most dynamic people I ever met. I had embarked on this new adventure in my life where I was turning my life completely upside down again. I've done that a couple times where I just wanted to radically change my life. I had moved to a new area of the country, to a farm. I decided to become a dairy hand, and the closest I got to a cow was like a Safeway. I'd visited my farm a couple times when I was younger, but never farming. Just been to my grandparents' farm and explored, but that's about all. I also became a vegan. I did a whole bunch of things. I changed my religion. I just turned my life completely around. And there was this woman at the head of it that was an amazing woman who just had it all together and knew what she was doing and had the diet down and had the religion under the understanding down, and I wanted to emulate her. And I don't know if any of you have seen Austin Powers, but I became like a mini-me version of her. I just walked around her like a little puppy dog, and whatever she said, I did. I never questioned anything. It was just like, yes, master, whatever. I remember there was 4 of us sitting one time, and I was just relaying this story to my mom. Was it yesterday or the day before? And we were discussing what shoes were considered appropriate for godlike women to wear. And I remember sitting there with bated breath, looking at my mentor, and I just sighed, and I was waiting and waiting and waiting for her to tell me what shoes she thought was appropriate. All of a sudden, this strong thought came in the back of my mind, and it was, I don't know if any of you have experienced that, if you want to call it an aha moment or an epiphany or whatever it was, but there was this huge resounding, what are you doing, Jax? Like, when do you start becoming who you are and decide what your walk of faith is going to be and how you're going to live? And I just sat there, and it's almost like you see in the movies where you take a step out of the situation and you sit there, and I was starting to panic because I realized that I had no idea who Jax was. I only knew who I was as a version of this lady. And that was a really, really difficult time at the time because our relationship got broken from that moment. And I'm not saying that she needed me to worship her in order to have the relationship, but it got changed because the dynamics got shifted so much, because whatever she did, I questioned from that point forward as whether or not it was applicable to myself. I then questioned how I wanted to live the faith. I then questioned what kind of diet I wanted, what kind of wardrobe I wanted, how I wanted to live, what interpretation of the faith was my own instead of being a prodigy of hers. That was a good training ground too, because next thing you know, fast forward maybe 4 or 5 years, I gave birth to this little dynamo. My youngest son is a social boundary breaker. Like, he would have I would have to get a picture for you one time. He had this mullet on his hair that was, when it was wet, it would come down to about here on the middle of his back, and it was long, beautiful curls, and he was all business in the front and party in the back, and he wanted to. He just challenged things. He wore a bright pink jersey to a soccer, and his coach refused him to wear it because boys don't wear pink. And Morgan's like, well, I want to wear pink. I'm a goalie. I can wear whatever color I want. And his coach banned him, wouldn't let him wear it. And I was so glad that I had that epiphany moment with this woman, because I was able to then understand that my son had a path that he had to lead on his own, where he really didn't care as much what people thought. Then life, it was interesting. Then he went through a phase where all he did was care about what people wanted, and he became a chameleon to them and lost that spark or spunk that he had. Thankfully now he has it back again, so I'm very thankful that it came back. All the while that he's actually going through all that kind of stuff, I'm sitting there, am I going to be a good parent? Can I, what are people going to think about me because my son is being like that? And I realized there was a process that I had to go through in regard to that. With having a son like that and with going through that epiphany, I became a little stubborn, and I didn't want to listen to anybody. So let's just sit on the pendulum, Jax. First of all, you accept everything that everybody says, and then you sit there and go on the other side and you decide, I'm not going to listen to anything anybody says. And there was a time, and maybe you could help me out with this, because I know I read somewhere, and I tried to find it on Google and I couldn't find it, of a gentleman that used to have a process that if he wanted something, he would go ask his social circle, and if he got 5 no's in a row, or close to being no's in a row, he knew he was on the right path, because he didn't want to stay in the social circle that he had. He wanted to become a great person. And in my mind, it's rings true that it was Walt Disney, but I couldn't find it. Anyway, if you can find it and comment below on who it was, I would greatly appreciate it, because I can't find the reference. And I started to do that. And one time I decided I was going to cut my hair, and I had long hair like I do now, and I wanted to cut it shorter or dye it a different color, or I forget, I wanted to do something with my hair. So I went and asked 5 of my people, and they're like, ew, why would you want to do that? That's like, but you have such beautiful hair. I'm like, ooh, number 1. And I asked 5 more people, and bang, I colored my hair. And then a friend of mine would be like, wow, your hair looks so pretty that way. I thought, well, it's because I just didn't want to listen to everybody else's advice. And I found that could be dangerous too, because there were sometimes that there would have been advice that I would have taken that might have helped me through a situation differently, instead of being a bull in a china shop and just blasting my way through it. But I was very thankful for that experience, because there was 2 sides that, 2 incredible attributes that I walked away from that experience. Number 1, when there's something that I really want, and what I hear, and it takes me to the place that I want to go, absorb, 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 take like the sponge. If it's something that just goes against my whole philosophy and goal, then I can be like a Teflon pan. It doesn't stick, and I appreciate. I had a kind of experience like that with my mother the other day. I was sharing with her one of my posts and what I was talking about, and she went off on this monologue on what she thought was going on, and I listened to her intently, and I thought, well, is any of that for me? And I'm like, well, not in this present state, no. And I realized that that was just her. She was telling me her core belief all through that message. And I sat there at the end and I went, well, Mom, you have a stickler about this stuff. You always have. And she goes, yeah, you're right. I always have. But it wasn't that I didn't listen to it, because, hey, I am her daughter and we live what we learn. We learn what we live, sorry. So I'm going to keep that in my resources in the back of my mind in case I have to bring that up again and listen to the monologue. But currently it doesn't apply. So that's where it sits, and I don't have to accept it. We do not have to think the same. We can agree to disagree on things. And I listened to her, and I told her that's her, and I can talk to her about her issue, but I no longer have to absorb it. So when I was thinking about this, a friend of mine was talking to me too about how she absorbs other people's energy, and she absorbs what other people think. And I'm realizing that how much do we really absorb what other people say, or are they just telling us what we already believe? That's going to be a conversation that we're going to have in another post. But my core foundation of how I listen to people is, do they have what I want? Are they, if I want to have money, are they living the life that I would want to live by attaining money? Or did they just teach it or inherit it or whatever? Like, I want someone who walks their talk, not just talks the talk. I don't want to hear about talking. If you're talking about something, like advice is very, like unsolicited advice especially, because usually people give advice that they need to listen to themselves. That's why I'm very careful when I give advice, because I'm like, well, okay, if I give it to you that's worked from my point of view, that I've walked it, then I have no problem sharing it. But if it's just talk, I usually say, well, you know, I have this in my own life where I'm working, and I usually go on a position where I'm in the same boat instead of this is how to do it, because if it was really the way to do it, then why am I not doing it? Anyway, thanks for joining us, everyone. If you want to find new and exciting ways to connect with the Common Guru, you can check us out on Steemit, and our tag is @ Common Guru, or you can check us out on Facebook and Twitter, and it's the same. We're at Common Guru. Otherwise, have an awesome day. Don't forget to subscribe. Take care. Bye.